Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Leadership in the Dealership podcast, where we strive to bring you the latest and greatest trends shaping the automotive industry with today's thought leaders. I'm your host, Don Richards-Boeff, and today we have a guest I've wanted to speak to for a few years, ever since I saw her on stage at a J.D. Power Auto Summit and NADA. So welcome, Liza Borches, President and CEO of Carter Myers Automotive Group in Charlottesville. For the three people in the audience who don't know you, Liza, can you give us a little bit of your background, how you got started?
Well, I'm one of the very lucky ones, and I know that, and I am super grateful to have been born into a family that has been in automotive now for 100 years. In fact, we're celebrating 100 years at Carter Myers Automotive this year, and our company was founded by my great-grandfather back in 1924. And so I honestly grew up not having any intent in coming into automotive. And ultimately, when I finished college, I went to University of Virginia right here in Charlottesville. And I was at NADA, actually, my fourth year of college. And I met Dick Zamborsky and Dick Culliver, who at the time were head VP of sales and VP of American Honda at the Honda, party or whatever they were having that evening. And my dad introduced me, and long story short, I ended up applying to their national management trainee program. And it made my dad super happy, very quietly. He didn't say a word, but he was just happy I was in automotive because no other job that I was looking at out of college was in the automotive industry. So I moved out to Southern California, went to work for Honda. I was with them for about 6 years in multiple positions, and ultimately was out as a district sales manager. And I was calling on a dealer group in Baltimore, Maryland, the Mile One Auto Group. And they ended up inviting me, Jerry Fader, who was the CEO at the time. He invited me to come to a leadership development 3-day training class with all of their general managers and their executive team. And I'd never participated in anything like this. I was still in my mid-20s. Maybe I was 26 or 27 by then. And I got to watch all of these general managers spend 3 days together creating action plans and sharing ideas and hearing what an impact that they can and were going to make on the associates in their dealerships, on the customers that chose to do business with them, and the communities where they lived. And I left there so inspired about the retail side of the auto industry that I didn't grow up seeing. And that was of no fault of my dad's. It was a tough time in the 80s and 90s. All I got to see was the stress of my dad trying to keep a business alive. And I saw him working 7 days a week, bell to bell. In fact, we had a family saying he would come home and he said 6 cars a day keeps the banker away. And every day we say, so how many cars did y'all sell today, Dad? And so I didn't get to see the fun, impactful, and highly rewarding industry that I now know is the best industry in the world. So I ended up in 2003 calling my dad and asking if he would consider letting me join the family business. We had never discussed it before. And so I ended up November of 2003, joined Carter Myers Automotive.
Carter Myers. So before you went to Honda, what were you thinking of? You said no other job you were thinking of was an auto. And I can imagine because of stress, you're sitting there going, no, do I want to go that direction? And maybe not going to the dealership first. We could say the relative safety of an OEM, although in the 80s and 90s, maybe not.
More the reality, though, Don, was that automotive is not a career path that any college professor is going to encourage us to go into, right? They don't know the career opportunities. So I had 2 mentors. One was a finance professor, econ professor at UVA, and one was one of my marketing professors I was doing an internship with. So I had one of them was really encouraging me to go to New York and go into investment banking. The other one was encouraging me. In fact, she helped set me up for a job with General Mills doing marketing for cereals. Well, all that sounded fine. These 2 people I respected a lot. And I remember telling Professor Schmidt that I was going to go work for American Honda Motor Company. And she's like, what? You're going in the car business? And this was even on the manufacturer side. So the reality is that, if I didn't have a family that had been in this industry, it's not an industry that ever would have been brought to my awareness, which is a challenge we still have today. that I'm sure we can get into over this hour. But there are wonderful leaders out there in our country who simply don't know about our industry and the impact that they could have.
Yeah. Some of that is, I think, just as consumers, the perception, right, is we all grow up a consumer, and people don't think about, well, what is a career path for getting into auto? So you start with a manufacturer, you call your dad and you say, Dad, I think I want to join the family business. And you said that was 03. Is that right?
I was not presumptive. I didn't say I think. I said, would you be open to talking to me about if this would be an opportunity?
Yeah, and Dad is probably thrilled. So what was that conversation like? And what is your history with CMA so far? How do we get to today, the present?
Yeah. So when I called him, I had been around enough dealers working for American Honda. I've been calling on dealers all over the country that I had seen a lot of second generation, probably at that point, not too many, but a few third generation dealers. And I said, Dad, I'm really interested in coming into retail. But what I didn't want to do was just be the owner's daughter and pop into the dealership where he was, be treated differently. And so we came up with a little bit out of the box plan. There was a really small Volvo dealership potentially for sale in Charlottesville. The owner was ready to retire. And he had mentioned to my dad that he might be looking to sell. So my dad said, well, here's a wild idea, Liza. He said, you could come back, you could talk to Herb Brown. And if you want to buy this store, it only has 13 employees. It's very small. They're selling 4 to 5 new Volvos a month. And he's like, just go in there and figure it out. He said, if you'll put up some money, we'll put up some money and go make this your own. And mind you, I've never run a dealership. I'd never really worked in a dealership. I mean, I'd done summer work, I'd done service filing, answering phones, worked all our Midnight Madness sales growing up, that sort of stuff. But I have so much respect for my dad for being willing to be confident in me and trust me to say, go figure out how to run a store. And so when I said I'm one of the lucky ones, like that is not an opportunity that I took lightly, and nor do I realize that doesn't happen to many people. So I put up 20% of the money. Our holding company put up the other 80, and we bought this little bitty Volvo store. And my dad was truly hands off. He was not involved. He's like, go figure it out. I had no idea what I was doing. We closed it was supposed to be Friday the 13th, and we all decided that was not a lucky day. So we waited, we closed the day before on Thursday the 12th. And I went in, and the gentleman who owned the store introduced me to the team. And mind you, I was only like 28 years old, but I probably looked like I was 16. I was younger than everybody in the room with the exception of 2 apprentice technicians. And I'm sure these people are thinking, who is this girl who's going to now come in and run the store? And I think I brought a lot of humility to the space. And I just took my time getting to know every single associate. There were only 13 or 14 of them, I think 14. And the way I learned was because it was so small, I had to do everything. I was the general manager, the sales manager, the finance manager. I was buying used cars. I didn't have a great service manager, so I was really the service manager. I drove the shuttle at times. I was pulling parts and running them out to technicians. And because it was so small, I got to learn every aspect of the business in a very unique way. And then one of the other biggest things I did was I called every single service customer myself the day after they were in for service and just asked them how their experience was. What could we do better? And we were small enough that I could do that. And I could not have scripted a better way for me to learn the retail side of our business.
And that seems like a template as a leader, right? You were willing to put yourself on the line, do any job, right? No task.
And admit what I didn't know.
Right.
I had to ask for a lot of help.
Use your team and your teammates to complement you, but be willing to pretty much do anything as a leader to learn the business, right?
So we took it from selling five new cars a month to I think our best month in 2007 or so was like 44. And we had 3 of us. My husband ended up coming into work with me at Volvo for a while. We had our first 2 kids born there, Don, and my oldest.
Hopefully not at the dealership.
Almost. So my son was born. They had a baby shower in the showroom for me. He was born, and as you can expect with a small store, it was tiny, right? We didn't have a lot of coverage. So I took 2 weeks off with my laptop on my lap. Now, I don't recommend this to anybody.
Yeah.
And after 2 weeks, I was back, about 2.5 weeks because I had a C-section. I was back in the store, and my son lived in the store with us till he was 7 months old. Because
Wow.
my husband was working there too. So we set up my office as a nursery, and I had the pack and play in there, and I nursed him in there, and he would nap. And we're talking to customers. I'd have him on the baby Bjorn, and I'd pass him to my husband. And then when he was with the customer, he'd pass him back to me. Finally, at 7 months, when he started to crawl, we were like, ooh, I don't think our floors are quite clean enough for that.
You're prototyping, right? On-site
Yes.
daycare, it sounds like, right? Yeah, okay.
Exactly. So,
Awesome.
and the nice thing is that did set an example for some of our associates who also were new parents, and we encouraged people to bring in their kids, and whatever we could do to support that family life. I think that hopefully set a good example in the store. Except I do want women to take more than 2.5 weeks off if they do.
Right. Yes.
So that was kind of the beginning, and then we've obviously started growing from there. In 2010, my dad and I, probably it was in 2009, started talking about the transition of the company, and we started talking about what our visions for CMA were to see if we were aligned. And as we created the vision, we started talking about what growth would look like. And in 2010, we had 4 stores at the time. 3 when I came back in 2004, end of 3. And in 2010 was really the first step in me taking over some of the leadership role and us saying, okay, we're going to now grow this into the next generation. So we went from 4 stores in 2010 to the 24 stores that we have now. And in 2012, we did a full succession plan, and I now have all the voting stock and the majority ownership of the company. My dad no longer has ownership, but is still my best advisor and mentor. And we really just took off from there.
Fantastic. So Carter Myers, you said 24 rooftops, and you're out of Charlottesville. What's the coverage for the group?
And that's a good question because it's been very intentional. Every group has its own growth strategy, and I get often asked by our own team, like, oh, can we buy the store here, buy the store there? And we've been very intentional since 2010. Every year we outline what brands are our top focus for that year, based on both their product strategy, their how much they value their dealer body, understanding how complex their programs are. So we kind of identify what do we think the next couple of years looks like. And then we look for geographic markets. Back in 2010, we outlined a 2-hour circle around Charlottesville and said, we're going to look for opportunities with these brands in this geographic area. And in that 2-hour circle, we did a little scoop out from Northern Virginia, not interested. And we did that because I strongly believed that having our family be involved, to be able to jump in a car at any moment and go work with a general manager, meet with an OEM, meet with a customer, with an associate, with a banker, keeping in that 2-hour radius, I thought there were plenty of growth opportunities within that circle, while also keeping the family connection. Now, as we've continued to build, I think it's more than just the family connection. It's about the culture that we've created. It's making sure that the values are seen through our actions. And we've slowly expanded that circle. Our furthest store now is in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. It's about a little over a 3-hour drive. We've got more depth to our team. We've got stronger leaders that I know CMA, so I feel more confident expanding. But we also target certain markets. Not looking to go in Northern Virginia, not looking for major metros. While you can buy a big store and have a huge net profit out of a large metro store, the culture that we have created, the community involvement that I think is a hallmark of CMA and in our DNA, those things are real in what we call medium-sized communities. So I would say it needs to be big enough to have a good employment base, big enough to have a great customer base. It's got to be a decent-sized store, but small enough where people and relationships matter.
So you can have that
types of markets we target.
Yeah, so you can have that one-on-one relationship as opposed to you're another body coming through a door, right? So in a major metro, fantastic. So one of the things that we hear about Carter Myers is that you're an employee-owned dealership. And I think there's only a handful in the United States that
I
are
think there are about 5 or 6.
okay. And so that's a differentiator, but you've mentioned a couple times people in community. You've got your customers. So tell us about why you put such an emphasis on people. Sometimes we hear customer first, but I think I've heard people first when it comes to Carter Myers. Can you tell us why that is?
Yeah, it's definitely people first. In fact, we talk about the most important part of having a great customer experience is you first have to have a great associate experience. They have to be proud of the place that they work. They have to believe that their values align with the values of the company. They have to want to give that discretionary effort to take great care of your customers. So it's people first, and for us, that starts with our associates. You mentioned the ESOP, and right now we are writing. My dad and I and a writer are writing the 100-year history of CMA, and I'm learning stories that I didn't even know about our company, that I see those values recognized in how we do business today. But one of the things I did know was it was back in 1941 that we started a profit sharing plan with our associates. That was unheard of back then, especially for an automobile dealership. So my grandfather always had this philosophy as well. He may not have put the words to it of people first, but a second core value that we always talk about is everyone wins. And we talk about how, when we're doing business and making decisions, that we have to always find a solution where the customer wins, the associate wins, the company wins, and then when all three of those wins, the community wins, because we're able to give back more. And the ESOP is the best example that I have ever seen of an everyone wins solution. When our associates are doing a fantastic job taking great care of our customers, customers are willing to pay us a profit. Profit is the measure of how much value we create for them, right? So they're willing to pay us a profit. That creates a livelihood for our associates. It makes the company strong and in existence for 100 years. It allows us to give back more into the ESOP, which gives a future retirement for our associates, and we can give back more into the community. It is truly an everyone wins circle. I've yet to find the downside of an ESOP. I mean, we've had one since 1979, and maybe the only thing I've come up with is that, Don, you have to have really good records. You've got to make sure that you always have cash to be able to pay out as people retire and leave, because we have people leave with big amounts. But that's just a fiduciary duty of any good business. And so that's the only maybe challenge with an ESOP, although people call me all the time and ask me, Liza, can you tell us about an ESOP? I'm thinking about starting one. And so I share with them that it's complex to get started. And I have yet to have a conversation with someone who has decided to actually move forward on an ESOP.
They like the idea, right? But
they love the idea. But that's also helped us with our acquisition strategy. In fact, we bought a group of 3 stores. It'll be 2 years in August. And the gentleman who sold us the stores was interested in starting an ESOP. And he did the research. He decided it was more work than he wanted to do. And he said the second best option would be to sell to a company who is an ESOP. And then he actually announced to his associates, he said, I want you all to know that one of the reasons that I'm selling to CMA is because you all will now be future owners in the company that you work for right now. And so he felt really good about that. And we hadn't necessarily thought of the ESOP being a benefit and acquisition strategy, but that was pretty cool to see.
So what do your people think of ESOP? I mean, you've got other places you could go work, clearly, right? There are other career paths, as we discussed. There's automotive, there's other dealerships. In your community and in the cities that you've chosen, the markets you've chosen, is ESOP like the banner? Is that what people see with CMA first? Is it an ancillary benefit? How do your people react to it when they come in and they learn that they can be employee owners?
I think people don't always understand it right away. And I almost think it takes somewhere in that 5 to 8 year range of being with us for them to even fully grasp what this could mean for them. They like the idea when they come on board, but they don't really understand it. So we talk about it at length in our new hire orientation. We do owners meetings every year where we talk about the ESOP. We give them their stock certificates. We explain how to read them and what it means. We show them who our top 100 stockholders are. Like, for example, we just had a gentleman retire January 1st of this year. And Carl started with us at 18 years old as a technician. And he just retired with $1.3 million of stock in our company that we're now buying back from him. So when we can show real examples like that, people start to get it. But it takes a few years to really get some meaningful amount of stock. And then people are always like, wait, is this real money? Like, yeah, that's real money. That is your money. Now it takes them 6 years to be fully vested. So it's 20% per year. So if they leave after 3 years, a piece of that stays in the ESOP and actually gets spread back out across all the other associates. So it doesn't come back to the company. But it takes a few years for people to understand that, but it is an exciting, something different when we're talking to people from a recruitment standpoint. It certainly makes us unique. And I would love to believe, and at some point I do think it's true, that people care more because it's their company. If they're giving more and they're working harder and they're taking better care of that customer and giving that discretionary effort, it is coming back to them in the form of equity. And it's coming back to not just them alone, but to all of their coworkers. And there's a little bit of peer accountability there. If everybody's stock is based on the overall results and performance of the company and how well we take care of customers, if you got a coworker next to you who has a bad attitude and a negative work ethic, it matters. It matters.
Yeah, fantastic. Let me ask you, I remember seeing you up on stage and going, Liza is the present and the future that I want to see in auto, partly because you're a woman in leadership, CEO, your dealership is growing. We here in the industry, there's more of a focus. There's things like WOCAN now. You recently announced with Danelle Delgado, a Women in the Dealership and Women in Leadership initiative. Can you tell us more about that? Because that's something to me, as I've been in the industry for the past decade plus. It was frustrating in the beginning to see appropriate representation of women, and I think we're not there yet. But but can you tell us how you're focusing on bringing more representation into the dealership?
Yeah, I actually feel like I have not done enough in this space. In some ways, I feel like I've failed up to this point in this space. It's something I've talked about a lot, but when I look at results or impact that I've had, I haven't done enough. And I work with Danelle Delgado as she's a coach of mine. I get together with her consistently, but in particular once a year, and I outline my goals, and she's given me structures and systems to put in place to make sure I'm moving things forward and prioritizing things that are most important to me. And when I sat with her again this year, and I still had not made any progress I didn't feel I'd made any progress in this area. And being a woman in leadership in automotive, in my own company, I should be able to have shown results that I've made progress. And I didn't feel that I had. And she looked at me, she's like, Liza, it's time to go. You got to take some action. And I was like, you're right. I agree wholeheartedly. And so it started as, let me just look at CMA. And there were a couple things that I was looking at data. And I think we all know across the industry, we're less than 25% women in overall associates. I think it's actually NADA's number might be around 22% of all dealership associates are women. And that includes accounting offices that are highly concentrated with women and certain other roles that we typically have had more women in. You get up to the general manager level and it's less than 10%. You get to the dealership owner executive level, it's less than 5%. And if you look at WOCAN's numbers, I was at their breakfast at ASOTU, and it's less than 1% of dealership owners are women of color. So the numbers just are, they're terrible. We talk all the time in this industry about wanting to find great talent and finding great leaders. And we are basically taking out half of the population because we don't even have any women considering us. Not any. We don't have enough women considering us. And a lot of it is they don't see the stories. They don't even understand the opportunity. There's nobody opening that door for them. So then I started looking, introspectively at CMA, and I noticed that we have a lot of women who start with us, and this is true industry-wide too. We have a lot of women that get to that departmental manager level. We've done a lot better in that space in the last, I would say, 5 or 6 years. But we, as an industry, kind of get stuck there. And we haven't gotten as many women up into general manager roles and executive roles as we need to, and to really make our industry as strong as it can be. We need all genders, all races, all ages, all ethnic backgrounds, all experience levels. We need diversity in an organic way, not from a checking the box, but we need all of those folks in order to make sure that we can really get the best solutions to keep our industry growing for another 100 years plus. So Danelle and I are starting, it started with 25 women within CMA that I had identified that were currently at the departmental manager level, and said, all right, I've probably hesitated in the past because I didn't want the men in our organization to think there was ever any favoritism. I didn't want them to think I didn't value them, because I love every single man in our organization. I have had more male mentors ever than female mentors, and I value these relationships in a huge way. And I never want men to think that I don't, or that that's not very high on my priority list. But it was time to take action. And so I said, Danelle, I'd like for you to put together a training program. Actually, she had been developing a training program based on 3 years of work she'd done with our leaders that she launched called Team Engage. And she took the work that she'd done with us, put it into a 1-year-long program, really organized. It's 52 weeks online training, and then a once a month live coaching call. And I said, Danelle, I would like for that to be the backbone of a program for these 25 women within CMA. And then each month we would do a live coaching call that I would help lead with Danelle and really tie these lessons back to automotive, because the training she does is really around leadership and personal development. And then I could help bring that home and tie it into what happens in our dealerships, how to help these women navigate situations. How do they tie what they've learned around emotional intelligence to a situation they just had last week? So we built this out, and she said, Liza, you keep talking about you want to make an impact on the industry. Should we open this beyond CMA? And I was like, okay, what does that look like? And so we developed a plan. And so now the goal is to have 25 women from other auto groups join 25 women at CMA, so that we've got kind of an equal number, hopefully learning from each other. And then what I also hope to learn is feedback from these women about how we as an industry can better support them and invest in them, help them develop. Because I do think that there's some differences in males and females in general, psychology, just from a psychological perspective. And we have a very male-dominated environment in our dealerships. So how do we make that a more, I don't want to use the word comfortable, because that's not where we're looking at. How do we make it a more inspiring environment for women to want to join? So there's a lot I hope to learn from this group over the year. And I've shared that any dealer owner or GM that invests in a woman to be a part of this, I will share with them all the insights. They're welcome to be a part of the group. They can listen in on coaching calls. This isn't supposed to be something closed that others can't learn from. And the awesome thing is I've had some calls with some other dealer groups who've called me and said, hey, can we collaborate with you guys on this? And then I've had others who say, I'm not paying for my manager to be there because you're going to try to recruit her. I was like, that's a rule from day one that can't happen, or we can't continue to do these sorts of things.
No poaching, right? Just learning from each other. So it's a fantastic initiative. And you hit on, I think, probably one of the most important points is this isn't an attempt to be exclusionary. You're really broadening what is a burgeoning talent pipeline, right? You need to attract more people. How do you do that? So if we think about that, and people are your most important asset, let's talk about the process for a little bit. We heard a little bit about training in what you've described so far. How do you, whether it's women, people of color, more men, just the right talent, how do you attract more talent? What process do you use to get the right person through the door?
Well, there's no one answer to that. It has to be a lot of different pathways to reach all different types of people. And I'll share probably 3 key ways that we do. One, we have a leader in our recruiting team. Her name is Beth Lucchese, and her title is a talent acquisition specialist. You will not find a better ambassador for our industry and for CMA than Beth Lucchese, and nobody's allowed to steal her. Her background was not in recruiting. I think too often we look for someone who is a recruiter to come into these roles. what we looked for. So Beth used to work for CMA years ago when we had a rental company that we then sold to Enterprise. She has loved this company forever. In fact, I think she's had in her history like 9 family members who've worked at CMA over the time. She has never had any background in recruiting, but she loves CMA. She feels passionate about our industry. And when I posted online that we were looking to fill this position, she Facebook messaged me so fast. She's like, I am the person. And I'm like thinking to myself, well, she has no recruiting background. She shares the story. She spends all of her time in community colleges, technical schools, high schools, middle schools, even some elementary schools, boys and girls clubs, veterans groups. She is out there shouting from the rooftops what an awesome industry we have. Everything about CMA that she loves and that makes us unique. And she is just the best ambassador. So she gets people fired up, excited, and inspired about paths that they may never have known about or considered in automotive. So she's our secret weapon number one. The second thing is I think we have created a really strong movement on social media with all of our associates because we have a common purpose, clear mission that we talk about. And that is that we are here to move lives forward. And we talk about owners just care more because we're an ESOP. And so if you go across 800 social media pages of not every associate, that's why I say 800, about 800 of them are friends of mine. So I know that we have a team out there sharing how much they love this industry, sharing a great customer story, sharing something we're doing in the community. Everybody's using hashtag moving lives forward, hashtag proud to be CMA, hashtag owners just care more. And so we get people from all over the country reaching out, wanting to come join CMA. They get to know us through social media. And of course, they want to make sure that that's authentic and that that's really who we are behind that. But we have our associates out there sharing our story. And so that's secret weapon number 2. And then the third piece, which really is tied to the second one, but when we do our new hire orientations every month, we have found that on average, 70% of the people that we hire had some sort of relationship with our company before they joined us.
Wow.
They were either a referral from a current associate, which we pay very well to our associates to refer people, because they're never going to refer someone with a bad attitude or poor work ethic, because you don't want to work next to someone like that. So we pay a very nice referral fee to our teams. Or they have a relationship with us because they might be a vendor partner. They might be a customer. They might be working for a nonprofit that we have partnered with. But 70% of the people that we hire already had a previous relationship with us. And that gives you a much stronger retention rate, but also means that they're joining us because they believe in the company and they're not applying because they need a job. They're not just going on Indeed and finding us. So I think those are the 3 areas of process. I mean, we have all the technology of what you have to do to get hired, but the process for attracting the people that we believe are our future, it's Beth Lucchese and our recruiting team of 3 people. It's social media, and it's hiring the high majority of people through relationships.
It sounds like you've turned 800 associates into mini Beths at least, right? Great ambassadors for the company. So excellent. Well, let's move into product real quick. So the customer shows up. You've got employees who are motivated to be there to serve, frankly, customers. It sounds like what is the best customer experience? You know, we hear through studies sometimes buying a car isn't the most pleasant experience. Do I want a dealership? Everybody talks about direct to consumer now, but I think dealerships are here for a reason. And a lot of it is the experience when you have a great experience. So what does the ideal customer experience look like when I'm buying a car from CMA?
Well, I think the most important part about a customer experience is that it doesn't feel like a transaction or a process, that it is personalized, that it's authentic. We all spend a lot of money in technology trying to create the right process around a customer experience. We always say the experience is based on a relationship, and then we wrap it with technology to make it more efficient and to make it more seamless, but that's not the process. And sometimes we actually put too much technology in place that hinders the process. We think it's a cool piece of technology, and it's actually harder for our team to take care of the customer because of all the steps they have to go through, the 5 different things they have to log into to take care of the customer. So there's a couple things that I would say. First, we have a full-time position. Judy Anderson is our customer experience manager. That is all she does for CMA. She leads an initiative called Code 4, which is caring owners delivering excellence exceptionally well with enthusiasm and empathy. Code 4. Yes, we can all say it. Say what it means. We have foundational elements. What are the basic things that have to be done every single time a customer is interacting with CMA? Because if you don't do the foundational elements well and people drop through the cracks there's no way that you can then show them an uncommon level of care and ultimately wow them with something awesome that's personalized and authentic. You got to do the basics first. And so for years, we actually had, it was probably 8 years ago when we were studying our customer experience, we found that we had a group of customers who, you always screw some things up. You got customers who tell us when you do things wrong. And we did a phenomenal job. When we knew something went wrong, we would go above and beyond, turn that customer around, most often have them be ambassadors. Then we had the customers who love us, that we wow every time, who would never do business with anyone but CMA. But it was all the customers in the middle, which is why we developed Code 4. And these were the customers that weren't upset enough to tell us and not wowed enough to be loyal to us. And so we really tried to understand, where are we losing these customers? And it was the little things. It was putting a customer on hold for 3 minutes. It was not calling them back when their car was spending the night in our shop. It was not having a place for them to park when they pulled in. It was the little things. So we built Code 4 around, these are the foundational elements of a great customer experience at CMA. This is what we expect. And then we layered on, what is an uncommon level of care which is unique to CMA? And so we have a second layer that we then go up on the customer experience. And then every dealership has the opportunity to personalize what they think the wow factor is for their store. Because it's going to be different for a Subaru store in Richmond than a Toyota store in Rocky Mount to a CDJR store in Martinsburg, West Virginia. So we want it to be personalized and authentic, but it's got to have a foundation of the little things have to be done right.
So we talked about people and process, even in technology. We had a CDK outage, obviously, that impacted the industry. End of month, end of quarter. Lots of systems go down. I'm sure there was an impact at CMA. How did you deal with that? How do great people, great associates, deal with keeping a great customer experience intact when technology fails you, is unavailable effectively?
Well, I think it goes back to what I just said about the experience is based on the relationship, and then it's wrapped with technology. And because that is our focus, honestly, for the most part, we didn't miss a beat. Our teams immediately went into action. They came up with quick processes, manual processes, spreadsheets. Most of our customers didn't even notice. I mean, they kind of noticed we were handwriting a repair order, but the basics of the experience was our people. And so I could not have been more proud. And Don, I'll tell you, I was out of town. I'm in a YPO forum meeting, and then I had an NADA meeting and then a YPO meeting. So I was not in town the first 3 days that all this was happening. And I actually was in meetings where I was not available. Like, I was not on the phone with them. I was not Zooming with them. And between my COO, my CFO, our executive managers and GMs, by the time I came up for air 3 days later, I mean, everything was done. They all had their processes in place. They had their plans. I could not have been more proud of how this team responded. I did not have to jump in and be involved and give direction. They knew what to do. Now, the hardest work actually came once CDK came back up. So our customer experience actually was okay, but there was a significant amount of work to be done by the accounting teams, the service and parts teams, the sales teams, to get everything put back in the system after CDK came back up. And that was the biggest load. And our teams, gosh, we certainly didn't ask them to do this, and I wouldn't have even encouraged it, but I think I saw that some of them were still in here at 4 and 5 in the morning on the night of the 3rd, because they were determined to get everything in before the 4th of July. They wanted to be able to go enjoy that day with their families, and they wanted their teams to be able to do the same. And they were just committed to saying, we know we got to get this done. And I am so proud of the leaders of this company, and actually all of our associates.
You built a resilient team, right? One that can one that can operate, it sounds like without you, which means it's not a bad thing. It's actually a great thing, right? Because you've got a team that
it's
knows.
Uncomfortable at first, but it's a great thing.
You got a team that knows what to do, and you put your trust in them. So you mentioned writing a book with your dad about the 100 years, the 100-year history of CMA. When you are an operator and an owner, you're oftentimes thinking about 30-day increments, right? Day zero all the way up to the end of the month. And one of the hardest things as a leader is to think about a long-term horizon. So how do you prepare yourself as a leader for the next 10 years and multi-generational, like the next 100 years of CMA? How do you get ready for that? What do you see for CMA in the next 10 years?
Well, the next 10 years is very different than the next 100 years.
Sure.
I think the next 10 years, we have a very clear strategy around what it looks like for growth over the next 10 years, the size of company we aspire to be, the types of markets, dealerships we want to be growing into, any other vertically integrated opportunities that could be a part of our group. I do believe that we're really good at running dealerships. We're not looking to go invest in all different types of businesses. There are dealers who I have a ton of respect for that have diversified all over the place, and that's awesome. That's not something I'm looking to do. I love the retail side of our industry, and we're going to keep leaning into it. But I am very involved on the legislative side of the business. I don't think that laws are going to save our business. I don't think that that's, but we do need to make sure that we are a part of the conversation around everything from franchise laws to electric vehicle legislation, estate planning legislation, ESOP. I'm very involved in understanding, what's happening around legislation that could impact our ESOP. So it's not the most exciting part of our business, but I do, when I'm looking out on a 10-year horizon, understand that there's time that needs to be spent by me and a few other of our leaders in that space. EV's probably been the one that's taken the most of our time the last few years because decisions that are being made at the federal and state level impact our business significantly. And if we're not having a seat at that table, shame on us. And the seat can't be saying we don't want EVs, and I don't think that our industry is doing that. But we are the boots on the ground that are understanding what's driving consumer behavior. We're understanding the potential roadblocks that are out there, and they need our voices as a part of that solution. So that's one thing when I'm looking out big picture is being involved in NADA and VADA in our municipalities to help build out where we think transportation is going to go. Another thing on the next 10 years that I'm continuing to look at is the development of future leaders and how we do attract people who would never consider our industry. We can't keep the funnel small. And you and I have talked about this a lot, so we won't go into it more, but that's a second area that I spend a lot of my time. So legislation, people development outside of our industry, figuring out how we attract, hire, retain, develop. A third piece that I mentioned, the growth of CMA, making sure that we have a really clear strategy and that we're adjusting that every single year. We do a SWOT analysis with our team. We create a 3-year vision tracker that we look at what are all the priorities for our company. And I get input from everybody. That's not my plan. It's input from our associates, from our departmental leaders, from our general managers, my COO, CFO. I take all of it together with the information that I can gather from a lot of things outside of our industry. I mentioned YPO. I'm very involved in that group. It gives me a perspective outside of automotive about everything from political, economical, environmental things that might impact our industry. So I see that I need to be spending 75% of my time outside of a 30-day or even quarterly window. Then my COO, CFO, maybe theirs is 50%. GM's, it's maybe 25%. So as we go down, we all have to split our time accordingly.
Awesome. Well, Liza, here's to the next 10 years and next 100 years. I think we're at time. So I just want to say I am so appreciative of you joining us today. I know you've got an insanely busy schedule. So thanks so much. I think we could probably go for another couple of hours, but
that would be fun. Another time.
Another time. Thanks for joining us today, and I look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thanks, Don. Take care.